was surprised when they took a quarterback because I thought that maybe in the third round, you can get some really good football players that can help this team now. And nothing against Mason. I think he's a great football player. I don't know him personally, but I'm sure he's a great kid. I just don't know how, backing up or being the third round, who knows where he's going to fall in the depth chart, but helps us win now. But, that's not my decision to make. That's on the coaches and the GM and owner and those kind of things. So if they feel like he can help our team, so be it. But I was a little surprised.
Sounds a whole lot like they just hired a prettier girl. What do you think, Greeny?
Well, there are two completely different ways to look at this. One of them is the notion of the veteran quarterback being willing to tutor the young player. We'll get to that in a second. The specific problem with this one is that it is completely hypocritical. And I like Ben Roethlisberger a lot, so it pains me to be the one that has to read this to you. But Ben Roethlisberger keeps talking about retiring. So the notion that he is now complaining that they have drafted a young quarterback is ridiculous.
You brought receipts.
In January of last year, he said, I'm going to take this offseason to evaluate, to consider all options, consider health and family and things like that, and take some time away to evaluate next season if there's going to be a next season.
Oh, dear.
He just said that. Fast forward 1 year, almost exactly, when asked about his future commitment, he said, I'm just playing them 1 year at a time, one game at a time, one season at a time. He said these things. No one forced him to say these things. There's nothing wrong with him acknowledging those things. But the obvious reaction, the sensible reaction by his franchise is to be prepared for him to be done. So now they draft Mason Rudolph in the third round, and Ben says, I plan on playing 3 to 5 more years if I can stay healthy. Well, I hate to ask the question, but which is it? Which is it? Are you playing them 1 year at a time, or are you going 3 to 5 more years? If he had said that before the draft, they probably wouldn't have taken Mason Rudolph.
And also, Ben Roethlisberger has a style that lends for him to be hit in the pocket. Now, he does a really good job of shedding tacklers and being a big physical quarterback, and that's what's made him a champion and a future Hall of Famer. But however, he's dealt with knee, foot, shoulder, and concussion issues over the past few seasons. He's only started 16 games, 3 of his 14 NFL seasons. So if you are the Pittsburgh Steelers, you actually need a backup anyway, regardless to how long he plans on playing.
Do you think this is just a simple case of complete and total lack of self-awareness, knowing that you said all? I mean, you can't say you're thinking about retiring, you might retire, you don't know when you're going to retire, and then when the team, whose job it is to continue to compete and try to make it to the Super Bowl and win, ensures their future by drafting a young quarterback, you kind of get, whiny about it. That just seems like a lack of self-awareness.
It surprised the heck out of me for exactly the reason you're pointing out, because if we all know that Ben said those things in the past, he knows he has said those things in the past, and I took them seriously when he said them. I remember thinking to myself, it's coming to an end for Ben for a lot of the reasons you just pointed out. He's a changed person. He's got a young family now. I think he's concerned about head injuries, which he's had several of. He's been very upfront about that. Now, quickly, because we're going to run out of time here, I will mention the history of this. It dates back to Tom Elway and John Elway, and Dan Reeves. Tom Elway, which is the little-known cousin of John Elway. No, John Elway got so mad when Dan Reeves drafted his heir apparent in Denver that was the split of their relationship, and Reeves wound up being out because they drafted Tommy Maddox in the first round, and Elway had no thought at that point of retiring. And from that time forward, the great quarterback is always prickly when they bring in the guy who looks like he's going to take his job.
Blame Tom Brady for all of it.
And you can fast forward all the way right now to Tom Brady and Jimmy G.
I blame Tom Brady for all of it.
And we saw this happen with Brett Favre when they drafted Aaron Rodgers.
Correct.
But when you're an organization and you're an athlete, period, you understand that there isn't a rite of passage for you to start every year and play your entire career with one team.
But do you want to be the guy who is grooming the guy who's going to take your job, who's teaching him, who's working with him, who's making him better than you so he can take your job?
I wouldn't mind. Really, I would.
Because you're a nice person.
But I've been on teams where they drafted somebody at my position. But when that person shows up at camp, I'm not going to act some type of way towards them. That's a reflection of my insecurity. I still got to go out and ball and do my thing.
That last part, that was key. Time for a little segment we call Cure for the Mondays. Yep. We start with UCLA women's beach volleyball team. They won their first NCAA title and celebrated the only way one really should, by jumping into the Gulf of Mexico. By the way, UCLA women's volleyball, to be their first seems a little surprising to me.
One would just assume they'd be very good at volleyball at UCLA. Here's the celebration, which I like.
Awesome.
That is.
I am so jealous of what I'm watching right now. To jump into the Gulf of Mexico would be a blast. Well, we have the East River. I suppose we could
do that.
Reenact it. Moving on.
Stop that!
Oh, you God, it's so disgusting. Brad Marchand licking everyone, including Ryan Callahan in Game 4. Before Game 5, both his coach and the league once again told him to cut it out. This is disgusting.
That dude to get hit with my stick.
Yeah, it's...
That's how we gonna settle this.
It's too much. It's too much.
I would rather you hit me with a stick.
Me too.
I genuinely would.
I'm a little finicky on all that. On to the horses. Justified won the rainiest Kentucky Derby on record, won by 2.5 lengths on Saturday. And once again, this begins the Triple Crown talk. Will we?
And the favorite now wins every single year. It feels like the favorite wins every single year. The question is, now that we've seen the Triple Crown drought broken, will people care as much? But the celebration was on.
Yeah, that's a good... You know what? When I was there, it rained too. That's just a thing. Speaking of horse racing, a Texas woman won $1.2 million. She placed an $18 bet on a series of Kentucky Derby races. Not only did she pick Justify to win, she also selected the winners of the 4 races leading up to the main event. That's impressive.
It's like a dream. What else can you say? It's one of those stories that tells itself.
$18 and a 1.2. On to boxing, Triple G destroying his last-minute substitute with a second-round knockout, retaining his title for a record 20th consecutive time. And this sort of came and went quietly.
It did, because it wasn't the mega fight that we anticipated happening this past weekend. And that's not Triple G's fault, clearly.
Not at all. It's the cow's fault for having stuff in it.
But in 6 months, we'll probably get the mega fight that we were looking for.
Oh, great.
All right, Wednesday Night Baseball, we're going to get this. It's the Red Sox and Yankees, both playing great. It'll be the second of their 3-game series. This game will have David Price and Masahiro Tanaka doing the pitching at 7 Eastern on ESPN and on the ESPN app. So coming up, exactly what part of the process involves throwing the ball to the other team in critical situations? Helen is going to break down the struggles of the Sixers, who one idiot thought we're going to sweep this series.
Oh, man.
I had the sweep part right. I had it right.
It is kind of impressive that you had the sweep part.
KOD.
Feel it in the air. Taste it hot off the grill. Spring is here, folks. The only question is, will you be? Kingsford, start something.
We don't just make cars. We make